And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. Rassie Erasmus has officially named his Matchday 23 to take on Japan, and there is a test debut for Zachary Porthen, who is named in the starting lineup. A huge moment for a player who's barely played at professional level, but has been backed to start at Wembley on Friday in a team that has a lot to get through. You've got Franco Mostert in the number 7 jersey. You've got Andre Esterhuizen in the number 20 jersey, seemingly very deliberately covering flank in what is said to be a 6-2 split. Also a bit of a surprise in Archie Snyman being let go by Leinster or be allowed to play by Leinster despite this being outside the international window, and does start in the number 4 jersey. So lots to pick apart in what is a very interesting side, which does pack a punch, to be honest, and returns to the likes of Johan Krabbelar, Gerard Steenekamp, we've yet to see in the Springbok jersey. Ethan Hooker in the number 14 jersey, return to Gerdly Arnser as well. Before we get into the side, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Right, that is the side that Rassie Erasmus has picked. Let's go through it, shall we? So, in the number 1 jersey, Oxen Chair packs down with Malcolm Marx and Zachary Porthen. What a moment. And I tell you, not somebody who I think at the beginning of the year we were expecting to see a debut from. Of all the debutants we have seen this year, I don't think anybody would have had him in their bingo card. But a huge opportunity for him and a huge moment for the former junior Bok, who has been highly rated by Rassie Erasmus for many years. He spoke about the fact a couple of years ago that they're looking at him as someone they believe they can kind of fast track into the team, and they're sticking by it, to be honest. Then Arcus Neyman next to Lourdes Diago. We weren't sure if Arcus Neyman was going to be available. The game does fall outside the test window, which meant that a lot of your non-South African URC players were potentially not going to be available, like a Jean-Claude Arcus Neyman, for example. And it's really cool to see that he has been allowed to play and that he is starting in the number 4 jersey. Siya Kolisi will captain this side. In the number 6, Franco Mostert gets a return. We haven't seen him quite a while, and we'll start in the number 7 jersey. Is he now almost more of a number 7 than a number 5 for the Boks, given the fact that Ruan Okia has kind of taken that number 5 jersey? Lourdes Diago, very much in the mix there as well. Gets an opportunity this weekend. But maybe talking about the fact that no one's really stepped up as a Peter Steph the Toy deputy, and maybe this gives a bit of insight into that sort of situation in particular. In the number 8 jersey, as expected, Jasper Wiese does get a start. You then got Kobus Reinach next to Sasha Famigom-Mazulu in the 9-10 combo. Kurt Lawrence and Ethan Hooker as your 2 wings. Kind of as expected, really, in terms of Damon Delende and Jesse Creel, given the fact that we expected this to be very Japanese-based orientated in terms of the side itself. But very interesting to see that Jason Colby has been released at full back. And this was probably answering one of the big questions, really, with regards to the non-selection of another specialist fullback. We left Willie Leroux behind. We heard that there was an injury to Damian Willemse, which has probably been confirmed by this team selection. And we can just see that they are backing Cheslin Colby as a 15 option. Off the bench, Johan Krabbelar, Gerard Steenekamp, and Wilco Louw. Good to see Johan Krabbelar and Gerard Steenekamp back in the mix. Ruan Okia, and then number 20, Andre Esterhuizen. Probably the other big selection is the fact that he has very blatantly been picked, in theory, as a flank for the weekend, which is a really big call. Kwaka Smith in number 21, Grant Williams number 22, and Miley Buck in the 23. It's a very strong side. I think it's a nice balance, to be honest. I think it has everything we need for a good result, as well as a bit of rotation. There is a bit of rotation. For example, the debut to Zachary Porthen, for example. You've got the opportunity for Cheslin Colby at full back. You've got Andre Esterhuizen, covering flank off the bat rather than kind of being number 23 and then being deployed as a flank. They're now being a bit more blatant about the fact that he is there to cover flank. Obviously, Kurt Lawrence gets an opportunity coming back into the mix. So I think this is, for me, quite the perfect team. I'm going to go through exactly what Rassie has to say in a second. And but before we do that, let me know what you think of this side down in the comments below. And, what are your score predictions potentially even now based on that side? But if we look at what Rassie has to say, He said as follows. He said 6 players in the group are currently plying their trade in Japan, and we believe the experience of playing in the league and either with or against some of their players will be a bonus for us. But I'm sure Japan will also tap into the knowledge of these players as they prepare for the match itself. Speaking about Zachary Porthen, he said as follows. He says, obviously, he has a lot to learn this week, but we have experienced players in the squad who have been helping and guiding him, and we believe this is the right match to give him an opportunity to prove what he can do. At this level, you have to sink or swim. So although it will be challenging week for him to learn our structures, it'll also be a very exciting week for him. Speaking about Japan itself, he said they are a quality team and they have a top coach in Eddie Jones, so we have no doubt that they'll throw everything at us. They beat us in 2015 and they showed what a quality outfit they are in the first half of our 2019 Rugby World Cup quarterfinal against them, so we're expecting them to come out guns blazing. And I think he's right, to be honest. I think you'd be very silly to underestimate Japan. But if we look at this side, it's got everything you need. You know, it's got a really strong pack. The tight five's really good. Obviously, Zachary Porthen is going to be the player that's going to be, I won't say exposed, but under pressure. You know, he's the kind of unknown. And a big part of the sink or swim dynamic that Rassie Erasmus is speaking about is, can he cope at scrum time? You know, can he get that scrum dominance that a Wilco Low would have gotten, for example, or Thomas du Toit would have gotten, or Nasin Tlabakanya or Neertien Bashir, for example, would have gotten. Apart from that, you know, probably a little bit of pressure on Franco Moster, a player who hasn't played much this year, you know, is getting a bit older, and he'll be under a bit of pressure to sort of show what he can still do. I personally thought he was very good in Cape Town against the Wallabies and fixed a lot of the issues we had in Johannesburg. So there's a big opportunity for him. And then the other big one for me is Cheslin Kolbe at 15. Is this the start of something? Are we going to see this selection more often? Is he becoming, you know, is he going to throw his hat into the mix as a potential first choice or second choice fullback, given the fact that we just have so many wings all of a sudden? Ethan Hooker is becoming undroppable. You've got Kirtley Arendse, who's got 21 tries in 27 games. You know, and that's not to even mention Edwin van der Merwe, who has had a fantastic start to his block career. So this Cheslin Kolbe at 15 there's a lot to pick apart in that selection itself. Off the bench, Andre Estes in the number 20. I mean, is this the full cycle? You know, he'll now officially cover flank. Is this just a literal mind games type of thing, you know, in terms of making them worry so much, and then they actually might deploy him at inside center? I think it'll also be interesting to see, even if he comes on a flank, how does he play? Will he still potentially be at first receiver off the back of lineouts and the likes of that? In terms of some stats, we have a 66.7% win percentage against Japan because we have only played them 3 times, in fairness. A big game here for Siya Kolisi. It is his 99th game, which means should he start next week against France, he will bring up his 100th at the Stade de France, a stadium where he's lifted the Rugby World Cup, the Webb Ellis Trophy. And there'll be quite a poetic way to do it, to be honest. Zachary Porthen will become Springbok number 953 on Saturday, whilst Jesse Kriel requires one more try to become a 100-point scorer for the Boks in his 84 tests. In terms of the caps in the side, there are 781 in the starting lineup, of which 316 are in the back line, 465 amongst the forwards, and a further 182 caps on the bench. The average caps per play in the back line, 45, in the forwards, 58, despite none from Zachary Porthen. The number of caps on the bench, 23 as an average. So for me, ticks all the boxes. But what do you think? And what would you change? So that is my question for you. And I'm going to get that up over there. And before we get into it, I'm going to obviously put a poll and ask, do you guys like the team? Yes or no? And if you don't like it, let me know why. So I don't want to see people who just you just say they don't like it without any sort of justification and the likes of that. So I'm going to put a poll out in the comments saying, do you like the team? Question mark. Simple yes or no. If you're saying no, again, I want to know why. I want to know why you don't like the team. And if you would like to drop a big hot take into the Rassie's Coaches Corner, please do consider sending a super chat. We've also done the maths. We require 1.67 members per day from now until the end of the year to reach 300 members, which is our big goal. So we've already had 3 today. However, we haven't had any for a while. So I'd love to get another 3, maybe, by the end of the stream, maybe even 4 members to try and give us a little bit of leeway heading into the rest of the week. Because obviously this December could be a bit quiet. So, yeah, ideally we'd like to get to 300 members by the end of November. So we need basically 1.6 officially per day. We've got our 3 for today, but I'd love to get another 3. So please do consider becoming a member. You get a cool little animation on the screen itself over basically over here, which comes up with your name and a number on the back and the trumpet and the whole thing. And then, yeah, if you would like to consider supporting the channel, please consider sending a super chat, dropping a hot take in that Rassie's Coach's Corner. And yeah, you will feature there, and I'll show you who the top donators are. And then in the main thing as well, over almost 600 people watching, please do subscribe to the channel. We are on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and you could be part of that journey. Right, let's go see some of the comments. Let's go see what everybody has had to say. And Puramanda earlier saying, get Villy in. That was before they'd actually announced the side. Alma Sharpshooter says, interesting selections here. 19 out of the 23 are probably sure selections for the French game next week. Looks more like a warm-up than a rotation team. Interesting, that sort of concept in terms of, is it basically a very similar side to what we're going to see against France next week? So is this basically like a hit-out, almost like as you say, a warm-up for the France game, get them all out there playing together and gelling? Or maybe we're going to see shocks against France. You know, I don't really know which way we're going to go. Joshua Pennington saying, I like the locks, good combo. Some of the other comments, Brandon Mulder saying, a big day for Zachary. Donovan Stein saying, I think we'll pump them by at least 25 points. Vardo says, no one guessed this team. Well, we're going to go through the my picks predictions and see if anybody even came close to this team. I can tell you right now, I got the tight head wrong. I got number 4 wrong. I got number 7 wrong. I got number 10 wrong. I think I said Kubas wrong. No, maybe I said Kubas wrong to start. Actually, I don't think I did particularly well in my prediction, in fairness. But we will go and check on those as well. Tyreek, who is one of our members, says, honestly, love this team. Matthew Manasseh, who's also recently joined the members club, said, love the team. I'm even more excited. King Power said, this is the easiest game for Portland to play. Does this also help him? I think it's quite straightforward in terms of it's not the hardest scrummaging game. For example, so it's going to be interesting. So at this stage, apparently, by the way, some interesting information coming from Rassie Erasmus is that Jan Ninja Vessels has appealed his ban, and they are not going to be bringing anybody in until they've heard about that appeal itself. So they obviously believe they've got a bit of a case there. Contender says, I think we will have Sasha shift to fullback for the second half. I'll keep Ethan on for the whole game, shift him into the centers and put Colby at wing. Anu says, Clutch King will always be there, number 10. Annette says, I'm very surprised that Rassie would not play the team he would against France. I understand they wanted to see Zachary, but I don't know about it. I was hoping to see Hooker at center. I don't think we're going to see Hooker at center in this sort of time. I think they very much now see him mostly as a wing, in all honesty. I think he's kind of gone the opposite. Mark Dunn says, good squad, should be a good game. Lilia B says, Pollard is still in SA. His wife had a baby girl on the 20th. Ricardo Mendez says, if Pollard doesn't play much this tour, it could be to see if Sasha and Mani can handle a theoretical World Cup on their own. Varu saying, surprised not to see Morne van den Berg in the mix. As am I, in fairness, as am I. Heinrich says, Sasha is not in a good space. He still have to work around decision. He don't play for me like a team fluff. He plays me about himself. If I check the franchise, Stormers play much better without him. Bold call. And Josh Payne is saying, please, yes, but don't get a red card. So let's talk about this in terms of where things might change next week for France. And I think that, to be honest, I think it's a good shout in terms of I don't think there's that many changes in all honesty. So the changes I think we see in the pack would be Volko Low or Thomas Latoya at number 3. So that's one change there. We'd probably see Ruben Okia in the 5 and probably Ebenezer Beth in the 4. So potentially 2 new locks. and then you'd probably see Pierre the Toy come back in. So you'd probably change about 4 players in the pack. Backline-wise, for me, it's a flip of a coin between Damien Delaney and Andre Esterhuizen. I think Jesse Creel will play. I think Ethan Hooker might start. If Jamie Williams is not fit, then obviously I think we might see the exact same back 3. Otherwise, I reckon Ethan Hooker potentially drops out for Colby, and Williams comes into full back. And off the bench, I'll be very interested to see whether we go 6-2 split, 7-1, 5-3. So I think that there will be changes, obviously, to this team from next week, but maybe not as... maybe not as many, or maybe there are going to be many. Maybe we're not. Maybe we're completely off, to be honest, with regards to what we're going to see from France. That's the one thing when it comes to Rassie Erasmus, is we just genuinely never know what is going on. And that in itself is really, really cool, to be honest. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for this team, though, to be honest. I'm really excited to see how Zachary Porthy gets on. I'm excited to see how Franco Mossa gets on the number 7 jersey. I think our lineup should be pretty good, given the fact that you've got Franco Mossa, Lua Diaga, and Arcus Neyman all as lineup options. That combination, Kobus Reinach and Sasha, has been really, really good. And I really like the combination of Grant Williams and Mine Liebach off the bench. And in many ways, I think that's a pretty, wouldn't say sure on, but I almost believe that will be the combination against France next week. I think that the back 3 will depend on Damien Williams' injuries, but could very well stay much the same. I do think we could see a Damien Williams and Jesse Creel combination. Andre Esterhuizen potentially off the bench. But yeah, there's a lot to go through here. Trying to see if anybody got this correct on the team prediction point of view. And so we're gonna have a look at that to see who is the closest in terms of how many people, how close somebody got. I don't think I got particularly close at all, to be honest. In terms of some of the other comments over here, Ike says, reckons Ox needs a rest. Kid Cynical says, I thought Dixon might start at 7. Carlos says, I would have rested Sia this week. He's tired. Has he told you that? Because he might not be. SVG said, I honestly don't understand this whole idea with selection. Andre Esterhuizen as a flank when we already have so many excellent out-and-out flankers that should be given the berth. Total BS. Well, alternatively, we could go and... we could go a 6-2 split. I mean, a 5-3 split and name him the 2023 jersey. And it would effectively be the same thing. So I think this is about experimentation, about looking at how we can still potentially have the 6-2 versus 5-3 whilst covering all our bases, to be honest. So I don't hate it, actually, to be honest. I don't really hate it at all. Brendan says, just saw a clip of Curtly Orange try 22 try versus England fire. Yeah, that was what a try. I mean, he's got such a good highlight reel, does Curtly Orange. So Leah says, does Kubas make it to the World Cup, though? Well, I'll tell you what, the way he's playing, I wouldn't bet against him. I really wouldn't bet against him with how he's playing at the moment, because jeepers me, he's just week in, week out doing the business. I actually don't think Kubas Ranak's ever had a run of form like this since he's made his Bok debut. I genuinely think he's probably in the best run of form internationally that we've seen from him. So, maybe a year ago, I was sitting there saying, you probably need to move him along. And now I'm looking at him saying, well, why? Why? Because he's doing the job. He's doing the business. And as long as he's doing the business, well, can't really complain about it, can we? I want to see how many players I got wrong with this selection. So Cameron says, is Dave Williams out of the complete year-end tour? He's still over there, so we don't actually know this yet. Sailing says, Rassie wants to make a statement in the North given the hemispherical pressure. Pretender says, I hope our line functions well without Nokia. If it doesn't work, Nokia is officially undroppable. You've got, yeah, you should be fine. You've got Arcus Dayman, you've got Franco Master, you've got Lua Diago, all three good line-out operators. Franco Master's world-class, Lua Diago's world-class. So I think that we should be fine. We should be fine. That's my guess. I could be very wrong, in fairness. But my guess is that we'll be okay. Mohidin Baye says, do you think Pollard will ever play again? 100% he will. Daniel says, where are the long locks? Great Portland is in, but what about the likes of JF Van Heerden? I think the biggest problem is that we've seen young locks coming through, but not quite at the same standard, I don't think, really. I mean, Ruben Nokia is obviously the big one. Kubus Visa got an opportunity as one of sort of a younger lock, didn't really sort of stake a claim. I think JF Van Heerden will be around quite quickly. They've been looking at him, and he's been involved in lineman camps and the likes of that, but probably just not ready yet. And I don't think at this stage, you're looking at the locks. I'm not worried about my locks. I think that we've seen how, Bruno Nokia has become such a big player for the Boks. I still think that Eben Etzebeth, for example, is playing at a really high level. I think Lua Diago's come back and shown that he's still playing at that level. Arcus Neyman's been one of the form locks in the world in the last year, really, especially for the way he's been playing for Munster last season. So we've got locks. I mean, the big question mark is probably sort of surrounding Franco Mostert. But now, again, we've got an opportunity to see what he can do. And I think, Rassie Erasmus was very right in saying it. He said, we're not going to just drop players for the sake of it. At the end of the day, if they've got life in them, if they're still playing at the standard that they need to play at to be able to make the Boks and the likes, they're going to get backed. And I think that's the right way of doing it. You can't just drop players for the sake of it. You've got to make sure that the new players are earning that and banging down the door. We are already giving more players opportunities than we probably did previously. So it is, I don't want to say easier, inverted commas, but it is certainly, players getting more opportunities to stake claims than what we've seen previously. And so I don't think we need to then continue with that and basically just keep giving out call-ups and the likes of that. Just Me says, Rassie gifting Sia 100th test cap at Stade de France is the ultimate love action. Good to see Chesney back at 15. Reminds me of his days at the Stormers. Rassie then playing mind games with the bench. Carl says, do you think Pollard will be on the bench next week? Or do you think Rassie wants to pressure test Mani and SFM because he knows what he's going to get from Pollard? I would love to see Mani and Sasha get the backing next week. I really, really would. I'd love to see them be thrown into the cauldron and go to Stade de France and say, right, what can you do? How can you compete? Can you rise to the occasion? And can you deal with the pressure and get us a result? I mean, we know they can. They did it in against New Zealand, but this is a different conditions, for example, different situation, and I think it would be a really good pressure test. Mark Dunn says, come on now, gents, bang that like button 100%. Please do smash the like button. 105 likes so far, 600 people watching, and no members yet. So please do consider becoming a member. It's a very normal amount. It's less than probably a cup of coffee, to be honest. And there are people out there who buy a cup of coffee every day. So consider this an extra cup of coffee with a contribution. Hungry Lion, yes, we will look at the predicted league points in a bit. I just want to get through all of this, and then we will have a look. And we'll look at the Forever Sports one. So if you're not part of it, please make sure you go and join it. You still counts your points even if you join it late. So you can go get involved in that. In fact, let me just share that as well so that when we look at it a bit later, we can actually have everybody who's involved in that league. There we go. That's the link in the comments. So yeah, Cameron says, final question. Will Rassie sign on until 2031? If not, who will replace him? I think he will. I think he wants to. I think he's putting pressure on SA Rugby to get that done. So I think that I think that they'll be silly not to do it. But at the same time, it's 6 years. It's a long time. It is a long time. And the problem comes then if we don't do well in the World Cup in 2 years' time, for example, it becomes expensive to sack him. So that is the downside, for example, of giving him that kind of contract. But yeah, Ricky Lowe says Ethan is a specialist 13. I hope we see him sooner rather than later. Well, I think by virtue of him playing so many times with the wing, he's no longer a specialist number 13. I think he's actually, to be honest, almost kind of converting into a wing at the moment. And I know everybody wants to see him at 13, and I know why, and I kind of agree with it to a certain degree. But I'm also really enjoying what I'm seeing from him on the bench. I mean, on the wing. So, yeah. Also, can I just point out that I think this is probably the highest percentage of people that have liked the team I have seen in a long, long time. I can't remember the last time we had over 90% of people liking the team. But there's only 263 votes. So please go and vote on that poll and let me know if you like the team, what you think. We're going to close that now in a minute's time, and then we will start a new poll. And I want to know who you think should start at 10 next week against France. That's my big next poll to do. Vado says, Andre is an interesting call. Ultimately, it gives Rassie the option to switch between 5-3 and 6-2 on the fly. I'm sure he makes a better flank than Benjamin Dixon makes a center. That's quite a simplistic but very good way of actually putting it. In terms of that flexibility, yes, are there better flanks in the squad than what Andre Esterhuizen will do and as flank? Yes. Probably. You know, Ben Jason Dixon, obviously Peter Steph the toy, Quagga Smith, Mark Verstappen, etc. But again, they can't cover center. And if you can continue creating these hybrid players, inverted commas, and creating these options, it just gives you so much flexibility. And it means you become so difficult to try and plan for. Eddie Jones now is, can he sit there and say, right, you know, does he have to plan for what happens when Andre Esterhuizen goes inside center? What happens if Andre Esterhuizen goes to flank, for example? How do these different things impact the way that the box is going to play? How do you defend against them? Are they going to defend against you, for example? Where are the opportunities? How do you exploit it? So that's the whole thing, is that unpredictability that makes it very difficult for other teams to study and to then basically analyze you and prepare for you. AJS says, I'd prefer to see Hooker 13 and Moody on the wing during the championship. AJS says, would Dobson qualify as a contender for future Bok coach? It's amazing how the John Dobson stocks are back up because of how they've been playing in a while. And now all of a sudden they're top of the log, and all of a sudden his stocks are back up, and everybody's sitting there saying, "Oh, he's an option," and you know maybe John Dobson is going to be the future Bok coach. And I don't think it's a mad shout to think that he will be involved with the Boks. I do think that John Dobson, especially from a cultural point of view, very much suits what the Boks are all about. Whether he'll become a Springbok head coach in the future, I'm not sure. I do see him as a potential assistant coach. I think he can add a lot to a change room. Whether he is the right person as a head coach, or even whether he's the right person as an assistant coach, I'm not entirely sure. But with the way the Stormers are starting to play, you know, he definitely becomes an option. Big shout out, there we go. Arno Virgil has become a Forever fan, joined the Forever Sports Members Club. So that's number 4. Love to get an extra 2. So big shout out to you, Arno, who has just joined that the Forever Sports Members Club. If you would like to join it, it is the pinned comment. It means a lot to us. It's really not a lot of money, but it really helps us with all the different things, like, for example, paying for a correspondent who's going to be covering the Ireland week and things like that, because there is unfortunately a bit of a media blackout from the Boks point of view. They're not doing any virtual sort of stuff, and yeah, I don't know what to say. Unfortunately, there is, you know, maybe go and tell them on their socials that they are literally doing a complete media blackout unless you're actually there in person, which they didn't tell us until yesterday. So, yeah, we're quite frustrated, and we are trying to make a plan, and yeah, we'll keep you guys in the loop, but it is very frustrating. So we can't yet guarantee whether there will be at the press conference. We've got the audio for the press conference later. Whether we'll be able to find video, well, that's what we're trying to work on. Unfortunately, we've got nothing to do with all of that. Martin Tyler said, I wasn't expecting such a strong line. I thought Cian Ox would be rested. And Billy Talk says, Porthen is an interesting choice. I would have liked to see Thomas Toy start with maybe Porthen on the bench. Only saying that the member there, Martin. Sorry, just me saying that the Glasgow guy, that's who Rassie should mentor to succeed. Franco Smith is the person you are referring to. Very much, I think, an option. But I do think the fact that he is committed to Scotland rugby shows that I think they are very much looking at him for the Scotland job down the line. And why not, really? Very, very big player. That maybe a manager that's got a lot to offer, like Scotland rugby. I do think he'd be a loss for South Africa, but again, he won't come back to South Africa for, I don't think, for like a Bulls job, for example. The only time he'll come back here is for the Bok job, or at least come back with an eye on the Bok job. Basically saying, like, you come back, you take the last 2 years, for example, you become the Bok coach in 2028 or whatever. That doesn't seem to be on the cards at the moment. Cameron says, I still think Jan Ackerman becomes coach after 2027. That's my prediction. And Padumane says, anyone else notice how bigger and more physical Kurt Lawrence looks since coming back from Japan? Exciting times. Jacques saying, look at me, you are the member now. But shout out for becoming a member. Anyone would like to become a member, you know how to. It is the pinned comment there. And... so please do consider it. Jake says, Jan van Graan will be my guess for the next Bok coach. Well, at this stage, I think until we know that Rassie Erasmus is going somewhere, we probably don't need to worry about it. Right, anyway, 94% of people say that they like the team. My big question is now, what's it called? Who would you like to start at number 10 versus France? That's my big question. Sashfam Zulu, Mali Liebach. Let's put just Liebach, shall we? With consistency here. Or Andre Pollard, assuming that he does withdraw in the squad and it's all sorted, which is what we hear. Will be available next week. So that's the next poll. Go and vote. And let me know what you think. Renner said the team is old. I mean, it's experience, but I don't think it's as old as we need to worry about here. I can actually tell you in 2 secs how old it is. Well, I'll tell you in a bit. I'll tell you in a bit kind of roughly how old the average age of the side is. My guess would be just under 30. Probably about 29 would be my guess. People like maybe a little bit older than that, but people like Kirsten will bring that down. Jan Kobler will bring that down. Zachary Porth will bring it down a lot. Yes, Sashfam Zulu will bring that down a lot. Ethan Hooker will bring that down a lot. So let's see how old it is, shall we? Zolile says that Sasha needs big game experience, and Robert says it's quite a mad selection. I suspected that Cheslin Colby would go to fullback. Think about that, Eddie. So I'll do actually a bit of an age breakdown tomorrow of the squad itself. And find out exactly how old everybody is, and where they are. Because I think this will be around 30. But again, as I said, there are players that'll bring it down a lot. Porthen, one of them. Sasha, one of them. Ethan Hooker, one of them. Off the bench, Runoke will bring that down. And Kobler will bring it down a bit. Gerstenkamp will bring it down a bit. And maybe one of the older sides. But again, my biggest thing, and this is where a lot of people differ, is 30's not old. 31's not old. 32's not old. Even 33, I don't think, is old. If you're 33 right now, you're making the next World Cup. As long as you maintain form. But from a body point of view, you make the next World Cup. That's not really an issue. And I think that's where people are getting a little bit out of hand, where as soon as you get to, for example, 30 years old, everyone's like, nope, old, gone. And look at the rugby Kobus Reinach's playing. Kobus Reinach was probably one of our best, if not arguably our best player in the rugby championship, was also probably our oldest player. So that kind of shows you it's, and just this whole sort of building to the next World Cup, we are deep into building for the next World Cup. We are less than 20 tests to the next World Cup. Because I don't think we'll have another 15 tests next year. Okay, maybe a bit more than 15 tests. 20 tests, maybe about 22 tests left to the next World Cup, probably around 22, 23 would be my guess. So we're very far into the process. There's limited time. If you're going to give, for example, somebody a debut, they're not going to get to the World Cup with more than 10 tests right now, because it's very few players are playing, 50% of our tests at the moment. A select group are. Malabongwe, I think, gets it right. Says his team is all question mark. His question is, are they world class or not? And I think that is the only question that we need to pose is, are they world class? Is it a good side? Is it the best possible side we can pick for this occasion? Does it achieve a certain amount of goals? Does that include, for example, and that can include a certain amount of, is this giving a little bit of rotation, for example? Are we looking at options? And that's what I always say is that, what are we achieving with this selection? We are looking at Porthen, and we are looking at Sasha once again and giving him more opportunities. We are looking at Andre Esterhuizen as an option at 7. We are looking at Franco Moss as an option at 7. I mentioned that. You can look at winging, for example, now the number 14 jersey versus the number 11 jersey. We are looking at Jason Colby in the number 15 jersey. So there are definitely experiments within the side. There are definitely things we are trying to check and to try and see and give us information. And I think that's very important, to be honest, and that's really good to see. And that for me is the big thing, is when you look at an entire sort of team life and the likes of that, are we ticking boxes? Are we looking at different things? And how much of that is going happening from game to game? And I think if we look at the entire sort of length of the season, I think when you look at the different teams that have been picked, I think it will really start to show a trend and patterns with regards to the planning that's being done. And I want to really have a big deep dive into this, because I want to see what the combinations are. For example, how many times did Andre Esterhuizen play with Kane and Moody? How many times was Lurtiaga with RK Snyman? How many times was Malcolm Marx, Oxenchair, and Thomas Dutoy on the field at the same time? Which is quite a difficult thing to do, but I think if you start, they'll obviously have all those kind of stats. And I think if you start to dive into that sort of situation, you'll start to probably find the patterns. And I think it's not just about finding out who's going to be the final 33 with regards to our best 23 players. It's about combinations. So I think, for example, we're seeing a halfback pairings coming into the mix. I think we are seeing that Grant Williams is kind of being paired with Mai Liebach these days. And Kobus Reinach is playing really well with Sasha. And you've kind of got the experience of Kobus Reinach with the inexperience of Sasha, and that's kind of being merged. Grant Williams, Mai Liebach, two quick, off-the-cuff, very aggressively attacking players. How well they're playing together. We're seeing the Andre Esterhuizen and Kane Moody versus the Damien Delendy, Jesse Creel. Damien Delendy versus with Kane Moody, Jesse Creel with Kane Moody as well. Or not Jesse Creel, but Andre Esterhuizen with Jesse Creel. So all the different combos we're seeing, I think combinations are a big point. And I think a lot of people are talking about the fact that we're not worried about about the ages, for example. Lilia Beast says age means very little these days. Players are still performing beyond the so-called expiration date. Cameron says, well, to your point, once you hit 30, the body does recover. It doesn't recover as quickly as when you're in your 2025s. You're also more susceptible to injury. There have been studies on this. Yes, but I think at the same time, and this is why somebody like Cristiano Ronaldo can play into those things, is I think you understand your body a lot more as well. I think that when your players get to their 30s, they understand what they have to do to recover. They understand when to listen to their body, what their body needs, whether it's a case of, my body needs some rest versus I need to play a game. I feel like I need to get out there and have a hit out and stretch my legs, for example. You don't have to worry so much about the technical aspects of your game. So you can kind of work more on a fitness side and the likes of that. Inari making a good point, saying Manano is still performing at 43. 43 is still playing at the top 14. So Troyden saying, if you're good enough, you're young enough. And I think it's so interesting that that's become a phrase versus the original one, which is if you're good enough, you're old enough. We've almost had to look at it in complete opposites now, and having to sit there saying if they're still playing at that age, at that level, then 100%. Vardy says France is more of a question mark than Ireland this November. Lots of Lions haven't played much since the tour. I still prefer to beat Ireland than to beat France, in all honesty. Maybe that should be my next poll. Maybe we'll run that into a little bit. Marcel says, France is a very young team now, no more DuPont. Mark Dunn says, point is that you are making a mountain of a molehill, and we're not seeing that with people who are playing. Look at Nani, stop worrying about the sky falling when we're fine. I think we're fine as well. I'm not panicking. Not that I ever really panic. And I think if you are panicking, chill. Just chill. There's no reason to panic. I think we're in a very good position, to be honest. And I also think that, again, I think the coaches nowadays are very aware of it. They've got all the stats. They track it very well. And I think they're much better monitoring performances, drop of performance, for example. Even, for example, managing minutes. And they spoke about the fact that Eben Etzebeth is no longer going to play 12 tests a year. Siya Kolisi, I think they said, will not play more than 10 tests this year. 10 tests is still a lot of rugby, by the way. I mean, traditionally, you would only have about 12 odd tests. The fact that we have 15 is a lot. So they said he won't play 15 tests this year. He'll play maybe 9, 10. I'll be interested to see how many he finishes up with. But they said from the get-go, he's not going to play every single match. And I think that's a good thing, it's because it allows for more rotation, but it also allows us to really understand that you have to then give players certain rest. And some players also suit resting versus some players who need to play. Even that is a very intricate situation where it's player specific. Some players really need the game time, need to keep playing to get to their best. Some players can not play for 6 months and walk on and be absolutely fine. So my next question is who would you rather beat? If you have to choose one, obviously ideally you want to beat both, but Ireland or France? Because I'm very interested to see what everybody has to say about this. I've got my opinion. And I want to see what you guys are going to say. So I'm very interested to see how that poll looks. And I'll give you my justification for why I'm where I am after this. Malabonga says the boys have played enough together and made their errors versus Australia. Confident they'll deliver versus France and Ireland. McCameron says, how many players are you allowed to pick in the World Cup squad? Is it 33? It is indeed. Lilia B says, on average, how many games do international players play a year compared to now? Internationally, they're probably playing more. Overall, they're definitely playing a lot more. Right, there is a lot more rugby. I think certain players are probably maybe playing similar amounts because they're being managed. But like a Jasper Vista, when he was at Leicester, it was played into the ground. Played week in, week out. Samir Francis says that the average age of starting team is 30.4 years and average age of the full 23-man squad approximately 29.8 years. So not bad. Well, there we go. I'll double check the maths, but Samir has done it, and I don't think that's terrible. I think that obviously also Jan Hendrik Wessels, I think, would have been involved, and he would have dropped that average age. I think had he not been bad, Asinatin Klabakanya would have been involved. Whether that meant that Zachary Porter wouldn't have been involved, there is that argument. But obviously, there's also lots of young players who aren't playing this weekend, like Kane Moody, who is a young player not playing this weekend. Ben Jason Dixon is in his late 20s. You've got a Ruan Okia not playing, who is obviously a younger player as well. So there are younger players in and around the squad that just aren't playing this weekend. Just Me says, just a slight note, what's your Ireland versus New Zealand prediction? Why is New Zealand playing France on the series? I think they just rotate, to be honest. So some years, for example, last year we didn't play France or Ireland. Now we're playing both of them, and we're not playing England this year. So it's all just rotated, actually, and I think it's the Six Nations body that basically creates the fixtures. And then obviously we've added Japan, but that's not actually a part of the Autumn Nation Series, which is, I don't know, even got a sponsorship now. Can't actually, Quilter. I think it's the Quilter Autumn Nation Series is what the sponsor is. Everybody knows somebody in Quilter and wants to sponsor us, we're open. We put a nice little Quilter sign over there. Unfortunately, that's where our 100K plaque is going. So that's been booked. Sean says, we need to consider that France does not have the Bokke continuity. Fatigue won't be an issue for us. Calling France fresh shows lack of insight. Martin Tice says the weather looks decent. Should get to see some great running tries. Well, I think it's going to be a quick, fast game on Saturday. If nothing else, they're usually very entertaining. Between when the Boks play Japan, it's usually quite fast paced and lots and lots of action. So hopefully we're going to be in for exactly the same thing next week. Right, people, we're going to start wrapping up there, people. Please do smash a like on the way out. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you for joining me. We will be live once again tomorrow morning, and we'll have a further look into the squad itself and kind of what it's all, how it's all sort of shaping up. So yeah, please do join me in the morning. Please do smash a like on the way out. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Let me know what you think of the team, and I'll see you guys all very next time. If you're watching this, please do consider becoming a member. Shout out to on who did become a member. We've got 4 for today, which means that if we can get another 4 tomorrow, Thursday, I think we can give a bit of a buffer for the end of the year. But shout out to you people. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you guys all tomorrow.